Okay, so we're now recording. I'm just going to open the floor to see if anybody has any questions about assignments, anything going on. I look like everybody did well with the midterm. I didn't see any issues there. Let me ask, how many of you use those practice exams a lot? How were they? Were they really helpful?
Yeah, they were very helpful.
Okay, good. Yeah, and I put those in place. And I think, yeah, everybody in this class.
I didn't get a chance to do it.
You didn't get a chance to take
the practice exam. Yeah.
Okay. And, you know, I know you all have very busy schedules, but I certainly wanted to add that extra layer of help if you needed it. All right. So any other questions as far as assignments or anything upcoming?
I just have like a quick, we didn't have to do the discussion post with last week, right? Or did?
No, yeah, you didn't have to do the pack back. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to double check.
Yep, no, you're good there. I don't think anybody did it really. I looked through the scores.
I was watching and waiting.
Yeah. No.
I literally remembered this morning. I was like, crap, I didn't do the pack back this week. And then I was freaking out, but thank you.
Yeah, no,
I usually go through your calendar to do it. So once I go through your calendar, I haven't seen it. I was like, well, we don't have it. So
okay.
Then, yeah.
Okay, good strategy. Yeah, I mistakenly I went in on Monday to grade them, and I said, what's wrong? Nobody did any of these. And I had to remind myself, oh yeah, I wasn't due. So it just came up with a bunch of zeros. Everybody had zeros. And did I miss something? And then when I realized it was, you know, because I've got 9 classes this semester that I'm teaching. So I've got everybody's on a different schedule. So the week prior I had what school was that? Actually, no, nobody had midterms. You're the first class that I had midterms. And then I have a late start one that has it next week. And my ESU students have it this week. So it's all over the map and it's sometimes hard. I got sticky pads all over my desk here reminding me of what's happening and when. Which and we're going to get into that problem solving coming up, ways of solving problems and methods that we use. So it kind of feeds right into it. Any other questions before we begin? Okay. All right. How are the group projects coming along, by the way? Everybody, I'm not hearing any complaints, so I think that's good. Does everybody feel like they're progressing along with that?
Yeah, seriously. We're doing well so far, I guess.
Okay, good. And I think because we are on week 8, which means I believe next week is the rough draft. So just to put that in the back of your minds, so you keep track of that. Make sure that your group is putting that together, and it's not due until Sunday midnight. So you have at least the rest of this week and all through next week to get that done.
Yeah. So this Sunday coming up, it's not, but the following Sunday it is.
I believe so. Let me get in and check that out. I'm pretty sure. What's that?
The 18th is something due, unless I'm mistaken.
The 18th is this week, right?
Yeah.
25th.
Yeah, that's this week.
We have assignment 7 due.
Yeah, assignment 7. And when is I'm not in there yet. When is the group project? 25th. Okay, so that's next Sunday, not this upcoming one. That the rough draft. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a heads up as to what we're going to be looking at with the group project. So obviously the 9th week we'll have the group project rough draft due. Week 12 you'll start thinking about how you're going to present. And this is just going to be a draft of your presentation. So I'm not asking you to present by the 12th week, but just start getting an idea of how you're going to do it, putting slides together, and then submitting those slides. Now, again, you don't have to present them. If you have video, if you want to do like any kind of graphics, one group over the summer did this awesome little video where they acted, some of them acted out the parts, and it was really complicated, and I don't know how they did it, but it was really kind of cool. However you want to do it. I did put some general guidelines as to what I'm looking for with the presentation, but get creative. If your group, each one of you want to if each one of you wants to take a section and present that would be fine. Or if you want to nominate one unlucky soul to do the whole thing, that's up to you. I would like to see group effort if possible. So anyway, your draft for your presentation will be at the end of week 12, and then week 15 we'll do our presentations. I'm thinking about doing live. I don't know how that's going to work yet. I might incorporate some extra credit into it and have some of you evaluate each other, or have like a ranking structure of who does the best presentation or something. I haven't thought about that yet, but give me a couple weeks here to think about how I'll do that, and we'll make it fun. All right. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to ask you a question. All right. When we think of the word intelligence, what comes to mind for you? What is intelligence?
Someone smart, like quick thinking.
Okay, quick thinking. All right. Let me share my screen here. It just asked me to install something. I don't know why. All right.
I would say ability to short things out, to figure things out.
Okay, intelligence. Figure things out.
Knowledgeable.
Okay, knowledgeable.
Great memory.
What was that?
Oh, I said a great memory.
One more time.
Oh, I said great memory. Someone that remembers things.
Great memory. Okay, great memory. Okay. And somebody said something, process, speed of something. What was that?
Quick thinker.
Quick thinker. That's it. Okay. That's right. So quick thinker. All right. So I want you to keep these ideas in mind, and I'll give you the definition a little bit later. We'll talk about intelligence a little bit more. But when we consider intelligence, we're really looking at how people think. Okay. And that's what your book, that's what chapter 7 really dealt with, this chapter. Now, again, we have a lot of theories that go into this. There's nothing that's really concrete as far as how we know. We don't have ways of tracing neurons, right? So we have ideas based on MRIs, functional MRIs, and PET and CAT scans of what's lighting up and what kind of activity is going on in the brain. However, we just don't have a way to say, this is hard science, this is how learning occurs, this is how thinking occurs. So it's all really based on our experience, and everybody's different, okay? So that's why we don't really have this down to a science yet. But our definition of thinking that your book used is a mental activity for organizing and understanding, understanding, and communicating. All right. So those are the three components of organizing, understanding, and communication. Now, communication is really key to this, right? Because we may, in fact, a lot of brilliant people throughout history may have been very organized, may really have understood a lot of things, but they lacked communication. Why is communication an important marker for evaluating somebody's thinking abilities? What do you think?
Because when you are thinking, is like you are talking in your mind.
Okay, so self-talk. Remember, we talked about that. Somebody's ability to self-talk, especially at a young age. And at a young age, we tend to verbalize more of our thinking than we do as adults, right? Because as we grow a little bit older, it's really socially unacceptable to talk to ourselves. So that internal dialogue kind of goes from us using our mouth to communicate it to more just quiet in our mind. We talk to ourselves in our mind. So absolutely. But being able to communicate in some way, either verbally or non-verbally, is a way to assess, to see how somebody's organizing, to see what is going into their brain, going into their minds, and being output in some way. We have to be able to assess that through communication. So communication is really key to thinking. Now, your book goes through a lot of concepts as far as how we use thinking. Like, for example, I think it used top-down and bottom-up processing. All right, so top-down processing. Did we cover this in another lesson? Does anybody remember? This seems oddly familiar for this class. I may have briefly touched on it. All right.
I think
so
it was in memory or something.
We may have, yeah, and I think I said that that I would circle back around to talk about this. But so some examples that we would have for top-down processing. When we're looking at, I think that's right. We talked about it when we were looking at perception. So top-down processing is taking a concept or idea based on our experience. So for example, say you're driving at night and you see two little, what look like eyes off the side of the road. What do you do?
I would immediately start slowing down, because usually driving at night, when you see two little eyes, usually means those are deer.
Okay.
And we all know deer love to run right in front of you across the road. And so, like, that's why I drive carefully, because they can jump anytime. And plus, a lot of times they jump when you're not aware and can end up damaging your car.
Okay. So what you're talking about now is you either through somebody else or through your own experiences, you know that driving at night, deer are a hazard, right? They could be a problem. They could ruin your car. They could hurt you could hurt them.
Yeah.
We don't want that. So based on what we know, we're taking this broad concept and we're looking for evidence. We're looking for little pieces of clues that will confirm what we know about this. So what would be more evidence that we're gathering? Say you said you would immediately slow down. So what else would you look for to give you confirmation that that is either indeed a deer or not a deer? Anybody? Is there anything else you would look for to confirm or refute your suspicion that it's a deer? Anybody?
The body of the animal or something?
Okay, so maybe as you get closer, you're going to see if it's moving or if you can see an outline of some sort. Maybe it's just a road marker, right? But you gather that evidence before you come to whatever conclusion you come to, okay? So again, looking at broad concepts based on experience, and then using problem-solving skills to gather evidence to come up with a conclusion. Bottom up is exactly opposite of that. So we are presented, we don't have any kind of experience, or maybe we don't have enough experience to develop a concept. So experience does not exist yet, okay? So we have information. Say you're a new driver and you never really encountered a deer before. So all of a sudden you see eyes, okay? Then maybe they start moving. And still you have really, you're in, again, put yourself in the position of an inexperienced driver. You really have no idea. You're just sailing along and all of a sudden these things start start happening. Maybe you see the outline of the deer. So all these things are happening at the same time before you start basing off of other experiences to form your conclusion. So does that make sense to everybody? So top down is somebody that might be really, really experienced and have a lot of experience with that situation. And bottom up is really applies to people that don't have a lot of experience with that. All right. And that feeds into our problem solving abilities. Okay. So what I'd like, let's see, how do I want to do this? What I'd like everybody to do, I'm going to break you off into groups here. Let me, before I do that, I'm going to have everybody check in just so I don't put somebody in a group that doesn't have, let me, hold on one second here, chat. So if all of you can just type in the chat box saying whether you're here or not, so that way I know who's here and I can put into a group. Okay. It looks like we got a good majority of people. So I'm going to break you off into groups of 3. Excuse me. So before I do that, oops. All right. If all of you could take a snapshot or a screenshot of what I have on my screen right now. Everybody got it? So what I would like you to do for your task, this is a book of matches here. These are thumbtacks, okay? And this is a candle. So your task as a group is to figure out a way to attach the candle to the wall so that when it's lit, the wax does not drip onto the table, okay? Is everybody clear? So maybe if you want to write those criteria down. So candle, when it's lit, has to be attached to the wall and cannot drip onto the table.
Question.
Yes.
Why?
I'll explain later. I'll explain later. We'll consider this a puzzle for today. So give this a try, and I'm going to break you off into groups here now. If I can stop share and add groups. All right. I'm going to send you in your groups right now. All right. Any questions before we begin?
How long do we have?
I'll tell you what, maybe at least 5 minutes, and then I'm going to check in with everybody to see who's got it and who doesn't, and then kind of assess it from there. Okay. So let's see how you do. Try not to look this up on the internet. See if you can use your own brains to do this. Come up with this on your own. Okay.
All right.
All right. All right, give everybody just a couple more minutes to come back, or a couple seconds, about 40 seconds to come back. All right, I think everybody's back now. All right, so who came up with the solution? Who wants to share their solution with me or with the class?
I guess one will.
Go ahead.
What we were going to do is use the thumbtacks to hold the box to the wall and then place the candle in the box.
Okay. So something.
That's basically what we said. So.
Okay, something like that then.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So group 4, I don't mean to call you out here, but you struggled with this a little bit, right? Did you come up with a solution since I checked on you?
Well, one of them, like, one person suggested like putting the table up to the wall and then the box right up against the wall, like on the table, and so that way like the wax would fall in the box and not on the table.
Okay, so you were using the box still, right?
Yes.
Let me ask. So, group 4, what are your ages? How old are you? All of you?
I'm 21.
21?
I'm 32.
22?
32.
And 20. Okay, so all in your 20s. The reason I asked
I'm
that.
32.
22.
32. 32.
32. Okay. The reason why I asked that is because when we look at thinking, we look at problem solving, we kind of use our past experiences to draw upon what we know about the situation to come up with a conclusion, right?
Well, one thing I'm very cautious about, I'm very fire cautious.
You're very what? Fire
I'm
cautious.
very fire cautious, so like I'm
Okay.
cautious of like what could possibly
Okay.
start a fire. So I'm always
You didn't want to catch anything on fire. So.
yeah, like every time, so like this, like whenever like my mom sets a candle, like which is fine, like if she wants to light a candle, like she'll light a candle, but I'm just like this, don't set the house on fire.
Okay, all right. So the reason why I had you try this is because I wanted to see, first of all, how creative you collectively were, and how you engaged in what you think about, or what your functional fixedness is. So many of us, we kind of grow up in a kind of a conformity society, right? Where 1 + 1 = 2. We learn our multiplication tables because that's what they are, and that's what our teachers tell us. So breaking out of this box, thinking outside the box, is sometimes difficult for many of us. So we call that functional fixedness, and we're engaging in what has worked in the past for similar situations and applying it to this one. Now, probably a lot of you haven't seen this before, so you might have been able to engage in a little bit more creativity and thinking literally outside the box a little bit more, right? So a lot of you were engaged in divergent thinking. So you probably came up with multiple solutions to one single problem. And that's what divergent thinking is many solutions, whereas convergent is quite the opposite, kind of like the top-down, bottom-up processing. Convergent is where you're looking for a single answer to come up with the problem. And we kind of saw that with this. While all of you used that box, not everybody tacked it to the wall. Some of you maybe used one tack, or maybe I think group 5 said they used a line of tacks to hold that box up, right? But all of you got used the box, which is really impressive. I mean, that's great you did that, because not a lot of people see that as the solution. In fact, I think this is the first class that I've had where all the groups got that solution. Sometimes I get quite a few that don't even look at the box as an option.
Yeah.
Right? So
well, sometimes like I think psychology also can relate to a point of view.
Okay.
And obviously, like, point of view is the way someone sees things, and everybody sees things
right
differently, so they may not see that.
There's this video, and I think I may have put it on our class for this week. If not this week, it might be in social psychology when we get to social psychology, about it's a video from Brain Games, and I love watching Brain Games. But they have two groups. They have a younger group and an older group, and they're given 3 switches that go to 3 light bulbs on the other side of the wall that they cannot see. And they have, within one try, they have to flip the switches to figure out what switch goes to what light bulb. They're crossed. So switch 1 doesn't necessarily go to light bulb 1. So anyway, what they found is that the younger group had a difficult time trying to come up with solutions to figure out what light switch went to what light bulb, right? Because you only get one shot at it. And they found that the older group was able to engage in more divergent thinking than the younger group. It was pretty interesting stuff. But anyway, if I didn't put that video out, I certainly will link it to this week so you can check that out. All right, so let's talk about intelligence. So we came up with some pretty good definitions as to what intelligence is, right? And that was, I think we said quick thinking, the ability to remember information. What was that? Knowledge. What was the other one? Let's see, look on my notes here. Figuring things out, right? So coming up with solutions to problems. So when we say intelligence, how do we measure intelligence? What are some ways that we measure intelligence that you know of?
IQ test.
IQ tests, absolutely. What is IQ?
Intelligence quotient.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
measures, it lets you see how intelligent you are.
Okay.
Used to take that test like a lot in high school with like my friends.
You
Oh,
took
I
intelligence test a
hate
lot?
Yeah,
I
just
hated
like it was just like a
standardized
little
tests.
competition in between us.
Yeah.
Oh, it was a what?
A little competition in between us.
Yeah.
Oh, a
One
little.
thing I did not like in high school was standardized tests. I did not like PSSAs. I did not like
Okay.
Keystones. I did not like SATs. I did not like ACTs.
So those tests, SATs and ACTs and PSATs and all that, those do those measure intelligence?
Not really.
What do
I
those
don't-
measure?
They measure how much you learned and remember.
Right. They kind of based
Yeah.
on what your schooling was and how much you participated in your classes. It's measuring your aptitude. So that's a little bit different than intelligence. And the reason for that is, can somebody have a high IQ and a low SAT score?
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like this, there are some units, like I am smart, but there are some units on PSSAs that I didn't do too well at, like math. Like I'm
Mhm.
sorry, but math and I do not mix. So
Okay. And
so
you're
like math is
probably
not.
you're probably alongside of a lot of other people, because some people may not be able to comprehend what they read, but they're excellent in math, right? And I'll talk
Right.
about that here in just a bit. But we have two different things that we're looking at here. We have our IQ, which relates to our intelligence, which I'll talk about here in just a second. But what you're talking about with the SATs and ACTs and PSATs, all that, that's measuring your aptitude, and that's based on knowledge through experience. Okay. So a little bit different, because if we don't have access to information, then how are we going to be expected to know that? That's not really a hit on our IQ. It could affect how our IQ is measured, right? Because we look at the ability to remember words, and in order to remember words, again, going back to the communication part, we need to be able to communicate that in some way. So IQ and aptitude are two different things. So when we look at measuring IQ, back around the turn of the century, 1900s, we really had a school system that was very regimented. There were certain things that kids were expected to know before they moved on to different classes and to their different grade levels. But what we saw around the 1900s was we saw this influx of foreign people, either from Ireland or Europe or the African continent. But we saw a lot of people coming in from outside the United States. And that made things very difficult, because they came from different cultures, they came from different backgrounds, they came from different schooling systems. So it was very difficult to really fit them into this nice, tight little mold that we had back at the turn of the century. So they started looking at ways to kind of level the playing field, figure out maybe we can test somebody and figure out if they belong in fourth grade, or should we put them back in third grade, or based on their knowledge and abilities, should we bump them up a grade, because the age grade thing was not matching. So they developed an intelligence quotient, and it was very basic at the time. And we looked at mental age divided by chronological age. Okay, so based on what a child knew at, let's say, 10 years old, let's say their current age, their chronological age was 10. If they knew what the average 10
10-year-old knew based on their skills, we could say their mental age is 10, which basic math would be what? 100. Okay. So 100%, we look at it as like a percentile, as almost a percentage. All right. So let's kind of go take a step back here. Let's say we measure another 10-year-old, and based on the average knowledge that 10-year-olds know and abilities that the 10-year-olds know, let's say this child knows about equivalent of what a 12-year-old knows. So what would that be? Mitch, I know you're not good at math. Anybody else do the math here?
I will
Simple
multiply
math.
them.
I can.
120. So we would say that that child has a IQ score of 120. All right. And opposite of that, if we get a 10-year-old that
80.
knows about,
80.
We'd have an IQ of
Okay.
80.
Simple math like this I can do.
Okay.
Yeah, this math I can do.
All right, good.
Yeah, but if we're talking about algebra, sorry, that's I'm out.
So a lot of what they based this mental age on was the 3 R's, right? Reading, writing, and what? Arithmetic, right? Arithmetic. I know. I don't know why that's right. They call it 3 R's. But
last time I heard that was like 3rd grade.
And writing isn't even an R. You know, like kind of, it's just a very misleading.
Yeah.
Why they say 3 R's. And math. Okay. We've expanded a lot since then because we found it just was not a very accurate way to do things. Again, if we were to say, like, we had a 7-year-old that scored and got a 70. Let's use a hypothetical situation here. Is maybe somebody from trying to think of what we'll say maybe one of the islands, the Caribbean islands or something. They come to New York and they're measured based on their knowledge when maybe they don't have as great of school systems where they came from, and they get a 70 IQ. Why would that be a problem? Why would that be unfair to say that child has a 70 IQ?
Because he grew up in a different, a different environment.
We base a lot off of IQ, don't we? We think of IQ as, and we can really relate this to mental disabilities, right? Cognitive disabilities. We could say somebody might have a learning disability, or this would be the margin of developmental delay. Okay, mental retardation is what we used to call it, but now we call it developmental delays or developmental disorders. But 70 IQ is that bottom range. So that's going to limit that child on things that access to more information. And they may be brilliant. They may be able to figure things out. So anyway, this initial equation was not fair to children. So we've expanded on that. We've had a couple theorists that came out with different things to look at. Okay. And one of them was Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence. So yeah, we're going to look at some of the learning, like memory, being able to retain certain things, and being able to read. That's important. Vocabulary. So he incorporated these math and reading skills into saying there might be other things that we can test. Like, for example, if I gave you a scenario, and slide 1, if you can picture this, slide 1, a man is walking along a sidewalk. And slide 2, you see a banana on the sidewalk. Slide 3, you see the man walking up to the banana. What would slide 4 be?
Would it be the man slipping and falling on the banana?
Right, exactly. So we can say, based on our fluid intelligence, And hopefully many of you got that, but we can say what's going to happen next because it just makes sense. We have physics in our mind. We have all these ideas in our mind. So anyway, Gardner's theory kind of proposed that we look at multiple things to gauge intelligence. Okay. Processing speed, we look at that. Somebody said quick thinker. That's very much included in Gardner's theory of intelligence, right? How quickly can we negotiate situations or problems or manipulate numbers in our head in order to complete a task? Broad, let's see. So anyway, I'm not going to go through each one of these, like speech and sound discrimination. This was a great foundation up through the 50s and 60s, but it really failed to answer a lot of questions. Like just because somebody does well in maybe these 5 areas and not so well in these areas, does that make them delayed in some way? Maybe, maybe not, but is that fair, right? Like for example, I have I have a PhD in psychology. Does that make me, should I be able to figure out quantum physics? Probably not, right? I don't have an aptitude for that. I don't have a background in that. Would I be able to learn it? Maybe, maybe not. We'll never know. But if I'm not able to pick up on quantum physics, does that make me lesser? Do I need a label to designate that is that fair? So that's what we looked at towards the 50s, 60s, and 70s. We did base it on what we could test children on knowledge and processing speed. So along came Sternberg. Yeah. So we broadened this. I forgot to mention this. So right around like the 90s and 2000s, we kind of broadened this a little bit and said, we can advance. We may lack one of those other 9 factors, but we can look at each one of these and say, somebody might be gifted in these areas. Like for example, musical. I know a lot of people like Yo-Yo Ma. Who's familiar with Yo-Yo Ma? Anybody? It's not a rapper. Cello player. Thank you. I had somebody in my last class said Yo-Yo Ma and they thought that was a rapper. No, he's a cellist and very brilliant cellist. At age 7, he played for the president. He was that notable. So very excellent musician. Interpersonal, intrapersonal. I think of Oprah with this, right? Very intelligent woman. We don't know. What's that?
No, I was agreeing with you.
Okay.
On that.
Okay. She may not have an aptitude towards logical and mathematical. I don't know this. I'm not saying this. She's not really, I don't think she's really known for her music, and she's not an athlete.
Yeah.
But in her own way, she might be considered highly intelligent because she, actually, I would probably expand that, naturalistic and existential.
Yeah.
But her interpersonal skills, and she's just very charismatic, right?
She always said this, and I agreed. She always says, we got to live for the life we're living today.
Okay. Word to the wise, right?
Yep.
So let me back up a little bit. So this was a great concept. Again, how do we measure these things? How do we measure whether somebody's interpersonal? And these are kind of ideas that we don't know how to measure these things. I mean, what makes somebody musically gifted? Is it just because that they're able to pick up a piece of music and read it? We can't develop a test for each one of these things, right? So along comes a man named Sternberg and theorizes that maybe it's unfair to try and measure these things, but look at it from the point of view of analytical processing, processing, or yeah, I'm gonna put 3 processes. Call this his 3-process theory. It's his creative process and his practical process. So let's revert back to the candlebox situation. Somebody that engages in their analytical process is able to analyze the problem and generate solutions. So we look at that. We look at this from a survival standpoint. If you think of somebody that has a higher IQ, they're able to generate solutions, sometimes pretty quickly. All right, so there's that component. So based on how quickly it takes them, or if they even come to a conclusion, we can rate them as either high or low on analytical. Creative, flexibility in thinking. Ability in thinking. So again, looking at that candle box solution, many of you were able to think outside the box. Really, you're able to look at that box as something more than just holding those thumbtacks, right? So that really demonstrated your flexibility, your creative process. Practical thinking, knowing if it will work, knowing it will work. So let me give you an example. And this is actually a student from many years ago. I asked for examples, and this person gave it to me. Driving to work one day and the car breaks down. Engaging in all three of these processes to come up with a solution. The student was telling me about how she just froze. She stopped when her car didn't. It stopped going, the lights came on, and she pulled off to the side of the road, and she didn't know what to do. So she didn't do anything, right? She didn't generate solutions. Now, I'm not saying that she wasn't smart, but anxiety tends to stifle our ability to make decisions sometimes too, right? So she wasn't able to come up with a solution. She wasn't thinking outside the box because she had to get to class, right? What would be, if you're stranded along the side of the road and you have an important interview or something to get to, what do you do, right? Do you take the bus? Do you just walk it? What if it's raining? And then coming up and executing that solution, solutions that are going to work. Like, for example, I think she used this as an example. She called her mom, who lived 4 hours away from her. What was her expectation with that? It wasn't to stop and pick her up so she can get to her class, right? That wasn't a very practical solution. So anyway, just being able to incorporate all three of these would really be a good marker for intelligence. All right. So again, I showed you how the IQ is factored. It doesn't apply to that anymore. We don't measure IQ by mental age versus chronological age. We use a much more involved process through the Binet, Stanford, or the Wechsler. And they have two different ones. They have Wechsler Intelligence, the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, and the WISC, which is the Wechsler Intelligence Scale for children. So based on their age, they would fall into each one of these. All right. But these go through a lot of processes to check out processing speed, check out memory. Their vocabulary is important too. But if you have somebody that's external to our school systems, their vocabulary might be lacking a little bit. Okay, so based on that, they'll have to adjust those scores. They're not going to say that this child knows 8 at a mental age of 8. Even though they're 10, because they don't know certain words. They're not going to give them an 80 on their IQ, okay? They're going to look at other things and factor in, well, maybe it's a cultural thing, and that child may actually have a 120 IQ, even though they're at a mental age of 8 on their word vocabulary, okay? Does that make sense? All right, so why you're probably wondering, why are we concerned? This is psychology class. Why are we interested in IQ? When we get into later chapters and we're talking about motivation and we're talking about mental health issues, right? Even stress and anxiety. So let me ask you, who might experience higher levels of anxiety? Somebody with a 90 IQ or 130 IQ?
130.
They might experience more anxiety. Why do you feel that way?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. It's saying I'm not unmuted. I just feel like they put more pressure on themselves to like, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it.
Okay, so somebody with a higher IQ might put more pressure on themselves as opposed to somebody with a lower IQ.
Yes.
Okay, all right, that's a fair opinion. Anybody else?
I think the person with the low IQ, because they feel like they're not enough, maybe. Like,
Okay. So they might feel like they're less than in some way.
yeah.
Okay, all right. Maybe. There's no good answer. This is a trick question. There's really no good answer. Destiny, you brought up a great point. Somebody with a higher IQ might take on more stresses. And if they have more stresses, they're probably less likely to be able to figure all of them out. So they might experience more stress. Amelia, you brought up another good point, is somebody with a lower IQ might have a difficult time solving the problems that they do have, right? So we can see it on both ends, but somebody that is well-rounded, analytical, and possesses creative flexibility in thinking and practical, knowing when things will work, will likely experience less stress and therefore less mental health issues. Again, not a blanket statement, but it's a good general rule of thumb. Somebody that can figure out their own problems, put them into play, and make sure and evaluate them for effectiveness is likely going to be more well-balanced and able to think through their problems and come up with viable solutions. So we're going to look at that when we get into stress and anxiety and depression. All right. Any questions on what I covered today? Any thoughts? Anybody want to add anything? How'd y'all like talking about intelligence?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. It's really cool stuff. I for my internship, I got to do assessments on teenagers, and a part of it was doing that. I did personality tests, which we'll talk about. I don't think it's next chapter. I think it's like 2 or 3 chapters away. But being able to assess somebody's personality, what kind of personality do they have? Are they introverted? Are they extroverted? Are they middle of the road somewhere? Do they have addictive behaviors? Do they experience high levels of depression or stress or whatever? You get to really delve into people's personalities and what their abilities are to manage their lives based on their personalities. So I got to do that. And I also got to do intelligence tests, which was a lot of fun. But yeah, being able to see what abilities children have or even adults have is very important, because that's going to tell you, and any of you that are going into psychology, that's going to tell you what their abilities are to handle certain therapeutic interventions, right? So for example, and I have this happen a lot. I have clients that show up that have, 70, maybe even less IQ. Are they going to be a candidate for giving them, I'm trying to think of, like, having them go through couples therapies? Let's say that they have impulse issues. They throw things, or they throw tantrums, or they scream or yell or hurt people. Somebody with a lower IQ might have a harder time with certain interventions. So I'm not going to use anger management, for example, because they're not going to be able to absorb that. That's going to be a little bit more difficult for them to absorb. So you're going to scale it back and do little homework assignments, like give them a note card with pictures on it. I've done that. Of steps to follow when they start getting angry. And usually it involves having a family member give them that card so that they can follow that, and give them a little task. So yeah, knowing what their aptitude, what their ability to take on certain interventions is very important. So that's kind of where intelligence fits into mental health. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. All right. Does anybody have anything for me before we shut down today?
Oh, yes. I have a last question.
Go ahead.
Is there any correlation between IQ and a person being rich later in the life?
Like, so if they being rich, you mean? So being successful?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. And one of the things, thank you for bringing that up. I actually forgot to mention this. One of the correlations that we found through science is that an individual that has a high IQ early on in life has a high IQ later in life too. It's steady throughout their lifespan unless something happens like brain injury or some like a brain virus or something. If something happens that causes their brain to reduce functionality, that would affect their IQ later on. But yeah, their IQ, if children have low IQs earlier on in life, we usually see that they are less successful. And again, not a blanket statement, but
Does that mean you can't improve it?
you can improve. You can improve knowledge, and it may take a little bit longer for some people to do that. I'm not saying that somebody that has an IQ of 70 can't be successful, but generally we do see that IQ is matched with success. So again, as Destiny said, somebody that has a higher IQ is probably going to take on more tasks. And the more tasks that we take on and we're successful in those tasks, the more successful we are in life. We're trying new things and we're seeing what works and what doesn't work. Somebody that has a lower IQ is going to be less likely to try new things and learn from those experiences, which again, we can relate back to success in career, success in money and all that. Okay. So there is a correlation to that. And again, it's not a blanket statement. I'm not saying somebody that has a IQ of 150 is going to be a millionaire. Their chances are greater. If they have a higher IQ, they're going to be generally more successful than somebody that doesn't. Okay.
And success depends too.
What's that?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily money in terms of like success.
Success.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not rich. I feel successful. I do what I love and I get paid to do it, which is awesome. So yeah, you're right. Money doesn't necessarily equate to success. All right. Well, any other questions before we depart? All right, great. I will see all of you on Monday. So have a great rest of your week, a great weekend. Stay safe. I'll stick around for just a few minutes in case anybody has anything for me, needs to talk one-on-one.